I'm Jude Joman, and it's so nice to be here with you today. Of course, on Citizens Forum, let's begin with the major news we tracked this week. Okay, let's begin with President Tinubu, who embarked on a 2-day visit on Thursday to Qatar. Of course, he did this after commissioning the first phase of the Lagos Red Rail project. And he's expected to participate in a business and investment forum while there. Of course, President Tinubu came under heavy criticism in Nigeria when the list came out and Nigerians saw that 2 of his sons were on the delegation list. All right, another thing that happened within the week was that President Tinubu set up a tripartite economic advisory committee. This committee, of course, comprises of the federal government, the subnationals, and people in the private sector. Some notable names on that list include Riwane Bismarck. We had Aliko Dangote on that list. We had Tony Elumelu on that list. We had Rashad, what's his name now? Abdul Samad Rabiu on that list. And we also had Wale Tinubu on that list. The president actually resorted to setting up this committee, as he said, to aid in stabilizing the economy and ensuring the best economic future for Nigerians. Well, why did Mr. President fill this list with people who we all know to be capitalists and who are players in the economic sector that should be regulated and not pure technocrats is left to Mr. President. But he did set up an economic advisory committee this week. All right, the NLC finally made good its threat to embark on a strike, on a protest. Even though it announced a 2-day protest, it ended up being a 1-day protest. Of course, this protest, they said, was to protest over hunger, poverty, mass suffering, and insecurity caused by government policies. The NLC did submit a 17-point demand to President Tinubu through the National Assembly. President Tinubu has also fired back at the NLC, telling them they are not the only voice of Nigerians and that it is unacceptable that they embark on this strike only 9 months into the life of his administration, which he thinks is too short a time to analyze his administration. All right, another one that happened within the week, very heavy and so much talk about it, was President Tinubu ordering the full implementation of the ORONSAYE report. All right, this report is actually an 800-page document that recommends the scrapping a margin of 220 out of the then existing 541 government agencies. And the idea was this was going to save Nigeria a whopping 862 billion naira between the years of 2012 and 2015. Well, Nigerians differed on this, but we saw Mr. Peter Obi come out to throw his weight behind the decision by the federal government, calling it a big step in the right direction. The House of Representatives, however, we are not so optimistic, and they called it an outdated report and went ahead to raise a 23-man committee to look into this, while calling on the president to thoroughly review this report before implementing it. This report was released in 2012. In 2014, President Jonathan ordered full implementation of this report. In 2020, Buhari ordered implementation of this report, and now in 2024, President Tinubu has ordered full implementation of same reports. All right, from there we move to the CBN. CBN, big moves this week. The CBN, the governor of CBN, Yemi Kadosho, rising from a meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee, the MPC, announced a hike in interest rates in a bid to drive down inflation and ensure liquidity in the forex market. Mr. Peter Obi also went ahead to caution that this was a very wrong step. According to him, raising the interest rate from 18.75% to 22.75% will worsen the economic situation in Nigeria, result in job losses, especially in the productive sector like manufacturing. He advised that to halt inflation, of course, that's what the government wants to do, halt inflation, boost production like food production, crude production, that the issue of insecurity ravaging the country must be addressed. So he thought that was supposed to be the priority of government, that if only the government does this, it was going to inevitably shore up our economic fortune. Well, investors in the Nigerian stock market, a day after this announcement, did lose 1.5 trillion naira of their investment in the stock market following this adjustment. But the CBN is stuck, and we see how all of this play out. We also move to the Nigerian Senate. Big moves by the Nigerian Senate to begin probe over the over 30 trillion naira ways and means loans by President Buhari's administration from the CBN. And this Senate did set up a 9-member ad hoc committee to probe the disbursement and usage of that money. Nigerians, and indeed everyone, have been asking, where did this money go to? What was this money used for? And no one seems to have a clue about what this money was used for. And so the Senate have stepped into it. The Senator Jibrin Issa-led committee is to look into this and conduct proper investigation and then report back to the Senate within 4 weeks. Of course, it's just important to note here and say it, that the major players in the 9th Senate that were there when this happened are also major players in the 10th Senate that is about to do this. Also recall that the former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, also reminded the Senate president that he was a key member of not only the Federal Executive Council that took most of the decisions during his time, but that he is a close confidant of President Muhammadu Buhari. And him, Emefiele, as CBN governor, never did anything without the express order, permission of President Muhammadu Buhari. But then we see how all of that investigation goes. We're waiting. All right, we move straight to Kaduna, where residents of Goningora in Chikun local government area of the state rose up in protest. And they protest regular abductions by people in that area, by whatever we call them, bandits, terrorists, hoodlums, criminals. They are called by so many names. And their annoyances, they say these people operate in this area for hours without any security agency showing up to their rescue, even when they put up these calls. They say sometimes, they say as much as 4-5 hours, having a field day confidently with impunity, raping, stealing, kidnapping, and then moving away, then going away to ask for ransom and all. Well, the state government did quickly deploy a joint task force of security operatives to the scene and warned residents not to take the law into their hands. Where have all these security operatives been all the while the people of Goningora in Kaduna State? Of course, that's anybody who knows that axis knows that's the neighborhood of the Kaduna Abuja Expressway, and they have been left to their own. All right, from there, BINANCE, there's been a long-running battle between the federal government talking about the operations of BINANCE in the country and linking it to the economic woes of the country right now. And so 2 executives of BINANCE, a cryptocurrency exchange company, have been detained on the orders of the National Security Advisor, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, over alleged forex manipulation. One of them is American, the other is a British Pakistani. Recall that the CBN governor had disclosed that more than $26 billion was channeled through BINANCE without traces just in the last year. And so the EFCC, they will be in detention, and the federal government has gotten a warrant to detain these people until, I think, for 14 days to allow the EFCC carry on investigation. All right, this one, as we will say in Nigeria, I say make I update on this one. The name SIM linkage, the name BVN linkage, of course, by the telecommunications company that demand for the name to be linked to our SIM, and the Nigerian banks that demand that the name be linked to the BVN. About 12 million Nigerians are said to be at risk of being disconnected from their network providers, as the Nigerian Communications Commission threatened to sanction telecommunication companies that fail to comply with the directive to block SIM cards not linked to the national identification numbers. Now, that is as it has to do with the telecommunication companies. But then to the banks, recall that the CBN governor had also sometime in December directed banks to place restrictions on bank accounts without the BVN and not linked to NIN, effective March. Of course, this is the month of March. It is said that 70 million bank accounts risk being blocked in the banks if they do not do this. Like I said, I say make I update you now. It's just important that everyone does something with this information. All right, still the CBN. A CBN nominee from the Southeast rejected TINUBU'S appointment. Elder Kanu Eke, of course from Abia State, MFR, rejected President TINUBU'S nomination to represent the Southeast Zone on the board of the Central Bank of Nigeria. He said this position will conflict with his current position as a consultant in the World Bank. Of course, Urum is executive chairman of Fairchild Group. He has been executive director at Diamond Bank and group managing director at First Bank Holding PLC. All right, and finally, on the major news for this week is Sunday Igboho. Recall last week, we talked about Sunday Igboho being back, but he's not only back, but Sunday Igboho is out in the fields and he's backing. Sunday Igboho has taken to the streets, vowing to continue his fight against Fulani herders and criminal elements causing mayhem and insecurity on Yoruba soil. I recall that the Southwest have been hit recently by some massive tragedy, where not only are we having monarchs being killed like common criminals, but remember Ekiti State, where not only monarchs were being killed, but also school children were kidnapped. So many Nigerians are yet to get over that trauma. And time again, Yoruba communities keep talking about farmers having their crops destroyed by herders who drive their cattle into their field. And some people insist that when you try to confront them, then it is sorrow, tears, and blood. So Sunday Igboho said he's back to his beats, finally. And he has asked the Yoruba not to wait for government, but to unite together and create a regional security. Today, we also read in the news that he has asked for permission from the Yoruba monarchs to give him their blessing. So he goes out there into the fields or the bushes, wherever it is these people are, and read them. He says no ethnic nationality should allow themselves to be ravaged. Still on that point, he has called for the release of Nnamdi Kanu, who he said is his brother and is just like him, committed no offense, but only fighting for his people. And he likened Nnamdi Kanu to himself, freedom fighters for their people. All right, Citizens Forum on Sapiencia's channel, still Jude Joman. Those are the major news that we tracked for this week. Right now,